as we were on camera, her feed cut off. I didn't see her anymore. And then I just saw myself, and I quickly realized that it wasn't a live recording, but it was recorded footage of me, in essence, with my pants down in the act. I pinched myself thinking, this can't be happening, this can't be real, because what she threatened to do was to take that video, blast it on social media, and if I did not send her money, that's exactly what she was going to do.
So today I am joined by a friend that I made down at the National Coalition on Sexual Exploitation, or on Ending Sexual Exploitation Summit in DC. But he's joining me from, I have no idea what the weather is. Normally it's a beautiful Florida, but is it beautiful? No storms today?
Beautiful right now, but give it another hour and we'll have torrential rain. Just watch.
So joining me from Florida, my friend Marcos Perez, who is the Demand Prevention Coordinator for the Florida Abolitionists. What's the full name?
That's the full name, Florida Abolitionist.
Florida Abolitionist, got the entire thing. And so I think I actually got to know you simply through wandering about the streets of DC at some ungodly hour
Yep.
as we were celebrating the shutting down of Backpage.com, which was a pretty...
Singing Amazing Grace. It must have been at 2 or 3 a.m. at the Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah, we just had to go hang out with our other favorite abolitionist, good old Abe. But yeah, it was through just a really cool moment of actually getting to celebrate a big victory, which, you know, sometimes you're plugging away at these causes. You're fighting for justice, it feels like, and you don't necessarily see the big wins because it's just slow change over time. But that was a pretty big night to see something like that happen, see a website like that. That was, I think anytime somebody asked, about like, what are some of the things that you would love to see happen? And like shutting down Backpage, that's like always been, as long as I've been around this movement, it's been at the top of the list as one of the things we'd love to see. So that was pretty cool. And so, yeah, I'm just delighted that Marcos is able to join us and share some of his story and what he's doing. And I have some questions I want to ask about kind of your whole journey in this. But if you don't mind, you have a really, I mean, a lot of people have good testimonies, but yours could build at least the plot, maybe not a full movie, but at least like an episode of Law and Order or something. And kind of what your journey has been in regards to this issue. I know, unfortunately, I can't give you like a 30-40 minutes that your story deserves. But
Sure.
Do you have like a 3 to 5 minute version of your testimony for how you ended up here today talking about this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Here goes my elevator pitch, man. I'll do my best. So it started back when, I'm originally from Brazil. Been living here in Florida for about 20 plus years. From very early on, I actually got exposed to pornographic content material, I think when I was 7 years old, through just mainstream media television and through magazines at that time. And then as smartphone, came out, that just kind of further the addiction that I had spiraled into that would proceed for the next 15 years of my life. Not knowing then what I know now about, pornography's influence on an individual, on relationships in society, I just, bit into that thing hook, line, and sinker, man. And basically it drastically impacted me personally as an individual, my relationship that I was in at the time, and then of course in my social context with my peers. And so ultimately what ended up transpiring was my addiction to pornography. It deeply affected my relationship that I was in with my ex. For about 8 years we were together. And throughout the entire time, our intimate life really suffered as a result of the pornographic, content that I was consuming at that time. And it ultimately led to a place in a season in our lives where there was a lot of tension, and we just, weren't, I guess, as close. And this is how the enemy always kind of sneaks in prime opportunities. And it just turned out that one day I got a friend request from a girl on Facebook I didn't know, but we had mutual friends, so I think nothing of it. I add her, and she immediately proceeds to message me. I reciprocate like the fool, in the moment, and she tried to lure me to go on Skype with her, to which I, uh, foolishly, acquiesced to. And at the end of the day, she ended up sextorting me, I guess that's the official term. Um, because as we were on camera, her feed cut off. I didn't see her anymore, and then I just saw myself, and I quickly realized that it wasn't a live recording, but it was recorded footage of me, in essence, with my pants down in the act. So here I was, and thinking that I was going to indulge in another quick moment of selfish indulgence and go on about my day like any other moment I've watched pornography. And here now the tables were turned on me, and I'm pinching myself thinking this can't be happening, this can't be real, because what she threatened to do was to take that video, blast it on social media, and if I did not send her money, that's exactly what she was going to do, which is actually what she proceeded to do. And as a result, phone calls start pouring in at that time, and I'm flipping out, going crazy, trying to contain the whole situation, make it go away, right? But fact of the matter is, I was exposed, and rightly so. In the moment, it was a very traumatizing, devastating experience for me. But looking back, man, it's probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it set me on course. Of course, the next day I would go to church and you know go down to the altar, rededicate my life to Jesus, and begin this walk and this journey of healing, restoration, and freedom, and purpose with Him, and a new identity. And I wouldn't take anything back, from what had happened. Unfortunately, the casualties that happened in the peripheral, I wish I could take that back, from the other people that I've hurt, especially my ex. But by the grace of God, man, He works all things to work together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And that's kind of been my redemption story in a nutshell, kind of what happened. And fast forward to where I'm at today. That's how I got involved into creating awareness about the harmful effects of pornography and the ties it has to human trafficking.
So how do you, I think that the thing that I'm most interested in, because I mean, there's a lot of people who want to fight pornography. There's a lot of people who have ended up in a situation like you found yourself. Really, I don't know if you want to speak to that quickly, but like, I don't think people realize how common your story actually is of being extorted like that, or sextorted, as they call it.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I frequently do speaking engagements, whether it be at a church organization, a university, or other locations. And in each environment, there is always at least one guy that comes up to me at the end and says, "Hey, bro," pulls me to the side and says, "That happened to me too." And we've even done talks up in Tennessee, a one-off event, and even there had a guy come up to me. And so I wouldn't doubt it if I would do a speaking engagement in any single state in this country or in the world for that matter. And at some point in time, a guy's either been approached or he's fallen into something similar, because that's just the platform of today's age of where everyone's socializing it and meeting at is these social media platforms. And so these perpetrators, these guys that are out there trying to extort people, they are aware of that, and they're aware of the power of the sex drive and people's lust behind it, and they capitalize on that, unfortunately. So
Yeah. So I'll come back to that in a minute, or in a few minutes, about just what we can do to actually fight what's going on there. But what I think is cool about you is the fact that you have this story that is not uncommon. But what is uncommon is you then finding the self-worth to still get up in front of people and speak about this stuff. And so how was that journey for you? How did you go from what I think most people would assume is the lowest moment of your life, literally being exposed to the world, of having all your secrets, right? Just like, I mean, the fact is that most of us would have a pretty bad day if our secrets were exposed to the world. And it just so happened that yours literally were. So
yeah.
I think most of us wouldn't even think we could recover. So how have you gotten to the point where you have the self-confidence and the self-worth to get up and not just kind of hold your head up, but actually speak to others about living in freedom?
Yeah, great question. And as Paul aptly put it, I am what I am by the grace of God, man. And that's truly, sincerely, wholeheartedly, my anchor is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and that's who I put my identity in, because I knew that what I had done, Marcos Perez, up until the 22 years to that point of my life, that was where my direction and my leadership led my life to at that point. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm taking hands off, Lord. You take control of this now. I am living my life in abandonment. I live it for you now, pouring my life out as a drink offering. And I know that my sole purpose here, the only reason I have life, and the only reason why he still has me here is to help others to not fall into the same pit and mess I fell into. So it's about, I think, at the end of the day, having your identity anchored in Christ for me personally, and that immensely helping. And it's a daily process. Daily am I recognizing more and more how fallen I am and how much I need to depend on him and how gracious he is and how loving he is. It amazes me. Daily, I'm getting a new, fresher understanding of that. And it keeps me humble and it keeps me driven to share that with others, to hopefully help them find the same so that they can find themselves liberated and hopefully pursue their purpose and cause and expanding the kingdom of Christ and walking out freedom as well. So, and then of course having a powerful why. That's usually, hopefully, something beyond yourself. Because if you're looking to really to yourself, that's really a weak why, and it won't last long, and it's pretty brittle.
And so you've mentioned before in telling your story that there were things along the way that led you up to that moment of being extorted, that you maybe should have picked up on what was going on. What do you tell people now about how to stay out of those things? Because like you said, it's a lot more common than people realize. And it's still going on. I read a story just the other day about someone I know, someone was trying to reach their child through social media. And the child to the parent, and the parent realized things that were off. So what are some of those things that we can, both for ourselves and especially for anyone who has kids maybe who is on social media more than they are, what should they know about how these schemes tend to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the onset, I had absolutely no idea, man. It was a whole fabricated story. I mean, you won't pick up on the fact that, oh my God, this is a potential extorter here. Other than maybe your intuition based on hopefully after seeing this video, red flags may come off. But I bought into the whole story that it was this girl from California. She's a college student, and she had all the pictures. So it looked like a real person. She's got posts on her feed, none of that, message me here, WhatsApp, it looked like a normal girl. We had mutual friends. So here I was, bought into the whole fabrication. As it turned out, and again, not knowing what I know now, but after later on discovering, it wasn't even a real girl that was on that camera with me. It was a pre-recording of a girl, and behind it was a guy. And they're not in California, they're out in the Philippines. All right. And that's where a majority of these scams take place, is either in the Philippines or in the Middle East. And that's what's going on right now. And they send the same video, just using different avatars on social media, different profile pictures and whatnot of different girls or guys for that matter. And they just send these messages out, friend requests daily to hundreds of men, and whoever bites, bites. And they're just trying to extort, not a lot of crazy money, but just if they can get a couple thousand from a guy here or there, I mean, it's a pretty lucrative operation if you think about it. But at the end of the day, it's something very evil. And so, my advice is at the end of the day, man, if you're having to operate in something that you have to keep secret, that you don't want anyone to find out, or you already have an uneasy feeling about it, just walk away from it. If it's something that, see, people do what they want to do at the end of the day because they think that nobody's watching. When in reality, for those of us that are believers, know that God's with us all the time. Holy Spirit, man, and He's watching. He knows. And so don't do what you wouldn't do in front of your grandma or your parents or your wife, in private. Have integrity, and develop that. Walk in accountability, walk in the light, or listen to that uneasy feeling, because at the end of the day, it's probably something bad that you're walking into. And so don't put out any personal information of yourself. Don't, God forbid, don't send any pictures, especially nude pictures of yourself, to anybody, because once it's on the web, it's out there, and they have control of it. And yeah, just be weary of who you accept on social media, because it's not always as they appear or seem. Just be very cautious. To this day, I delete a lot of people that try to friend request me, just because I'm like, I don't want to say paranoid, but I'm just on guard, to this day.
And so, I mean, obviously, enough now. you would not end up in that situation again. And yet the world that we live in is so hypersexualized, right? The porn industry is very, very interested in keeping your eyes and keeping your attention on the content that they want you to see. So how do you live your life? Not just, there's the big extreme situations. I don't want to be sextorted anymore. But just to say, like, I want to be the guy that has the integrity, I know who I am, the person I am in public is the same as I am in private. What do you do now to try to live out the life of the Marcos Perez that you really want to be?
Well, my hope would be that people don't strive to live out the life of Marcos Perez, but one of Christ. I always point it back to him. Man. I'm not being cliche or cheesy, but that's the truth. And so, look to Christ. He modeled the example for us. But ultimately, for me, it starts with admitting. All right, having the awareness. Hey, you know what? I'm struggling. I have a problem that I've made promises to myself, to God, to my wife, to my spouse, to my kids that I couldn't keep. I've made commitments I couldn't keep, and I've spent more money than I wish I would have spent. I've gone further than I wish I would have gone, and so it's cost me more than I thought it was going to cost me. And you're probably addicted, or maybe you have an issue. And so as more research and science is coming out, it is really a brain issue. And as we've seen how this affects the prefrontal cortex part of your brain, your CEO of your brain, your cognitive thinking, your decision-making portion of your brain, it profoundly impacts that region. So you can't literally make a decision on your own to just stop on your own. So first, it starts with that awareness, and then reaching out for help, because you need an external source from the outside in, helping you walk through this journey to help you accomplish freedom. So walking in accountability is so key. So I have Covenant Eyes software installed on all my devices. And I have a handful of leaders and men that I respect and trust and are God-fearing men that are also in pursuit of Christ, as I am. And they keep me accountable. They get a weekly report of all my activity on my phone and all my devices to keep me, in check. And not only that, but I'm in consistent fellowship and community with people that are like-minded, that are also walking in freedom, also sharing the same things. So I'm not putting myself in environments that's going to compromise my integrity or tempt me. It's already hard enough being in this world. I don't need to help the devil, do his job, at the end of the day. And so I just consecrate myself, man, to the best of my ability. I delete people that, I know could be triggers. Like, for example, I've had to get off Instagram. I'm not on Instagram anymore. I'm not on Snapchat. I only have Facebook, because I know my boundaries. I know my limits, and so I know that there's temptation on all those sites. Not that there isn't on Facebook, but more so on Instagram these days with the whole discover or search feature they have there, and so it's been a problem for me in the past. So I deleted it. And so you just recognize your boundaries and you put them in place, and it'll help you, and it's not about behavior modification. As we know, it's about a heart change ultimately that'll externally, yield the fruits and of the heart change. But having these external things in place does definitely help, and so walking in the light, being in accountability, being honest with yourself and with somebody else, all right, and expose the whole truth. Don't just show 50% of what's going on in your life and in your heart or your struggle. 100%, man, like butt naked in front of somebody, not literally, but metaphorically, expose everything to someone that you can trust, all right, that is in a position in life where you want to be and has what you want. In other words, they're walking out freedom, all right, they're a God-fearing person, a man or woman, and they're able to truly help keep you accountable and on track. So those are just a couple things that one could implement.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, that whole picture, right, of especially I think finding people who are ahead of you in the journey, right? I think a lot of us, when we were first trying to, figure out how to do this thing and how to be accountable and stuff, it's like we find a bunch of people who are exactly where we are because we're not afraid of being judged by them, because we all get together and we're all like, hey man, how'd you do? Oh, I messed up this week. How'd you do? Oh yeah, I'm a total mess. Oh great. Like, now none of us feel bad. But actually finding those people, right, who can inspire you to be better, who can actually say like, hey, I'm further down this journey, like come along this way, and to actually have an example in front of you that is further along. And it's like, I remember this one time this guy phoned me up and he it's like, hey, I totally fell hard. And I start to just give him like these cheesy lines about like, oh, the blood of Jesus or whatever it was. It's like, it was probably more Hallmark card than Bible. And he goes, dude, what are you doing? Like, admonish me. Like, I need you to be like, come on, this isn't what we're trying to do here. We want to be living our lives differently. I don't want to feel good. And it's being willing to be in that uncomfortable place of, yeah, if I do this, I don't want to do it. And I don't mind having people in my life who are going to say, hey, that's not the life you want to live. Like, you want to live differently. Let's do it. What's that going to look like?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's great. I love how that guy reacted. Admonish me, man. Ask for it. That's good stuff. That's awesome. He's committed. He's in.
So lastly, just tell me a little bit more about what you're doing, because when people hear about abolition, right, we think about just ending slavery. So, we hear about the people who go in and try to, rescue people. But you're the demand prevention coordinator. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so demand prevention coordinator. So it wasn't only a couple of years ago. Well, fast flashback about 5-6 years ago, whenever that movie Taken came out. I don't know if you guys, that was released up there in Canada or not, but Taken, that was my first exposure to like human trafficking. And this is like way, BC pre-Christ for me in my life. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. I can't believe it's out there in the world, but I'm thinking it's a fiction movie, and walked out the theater, thought nothing of it. Then I go to the whole sextortion scan thing, life gets changed. And then I start learning about pornography, and then I start seeing and learning about its links to human trafficking. And I'm like, wait a minute, this thing's real. And not only is it real, but it's happening here in the States, and it's here in the northern hemisphere, like in our continent. And I'm like, no way, it's not a third world issue. Like, you got to be kidding me. And then you start learning the stats about how Florida is the third state in the U.S. For human trafficking, as reported by the National Human Trafficking Hotline for calls received. And that Orlando is the third city per capita in the state of Florida where human trafficking takes place. And so you're like, that's insane. And so pornography fuels the demand for the supply of human trafficking. Why? Because at the end of the day, a lot of these traffickers record, photograph a lot of their girls that are caught up in the trade, and they market it and they put it on these websites. And a lot of the stuff that guys are, unbeknownst to them, consuming are actually girls that are trafficked, that are forced, defrauded, or coerced into doing what they've done. And a lot of times they're drugged, and so there's a huge linking connection between pornography and human trafficking. And so our organization does a great job at implementing rehabilitative and preventative restorative solutions to help curb and end human trafficking and modern day slavery, as we call it, so to speak, because it still exists. There's over 30 million slaves in the world today, whether they're in domestic servitude, forced labor, or sex trafficking. A big bulk of that is sex trafficking. And a big bulk of that are women, young girls. And so at the end of the day, it's great, if you heard the analogy of, you see babies or a body coming down the river or whatever, and you get the body out the river, the baby out the river, and every day you're taking, the bodies out the river, but you're like, at one point you're like, man, who's upstream throwing the bodies into the river? You know what I'm saying? So I want to go to the root of the problem. And that's where I think pornography, and even more in depth into that, starting with our younger generation, our youth, and reinstilling biblical godly principles into the household, and having godly men step up as leaders in their household to lead their family biblically, to educate them, to create the awareness so that they're guarded. It's not a matter they're going to now be in this bubble and be completely safe from being exposed to pornography. No, they probably still will be exposed to pornography, but they'll at least then know how to respond appropriately, and then can be godly men and women themselves growing up and be a force for this generation. And so my role is to coordinate and facilitate awareness trainings and accountability groups, all right, to educate the public, especially men, about the harmful effects of pornography, so that they understand the harms that it can have on themselves, on their relationships, and in a social context, and what it's fueling, in essence, what they're endorsing by deciding to be a consumer of that, and to change the rhetoric, and so that they now begin to develop a healthy perspective and context for sexuality and towards women, so that they can walk out a healthy sexuality and sexual integrity in their lives. And so take a stand. And I'm starting to now more so work with the youth now, because I mean, it's really where it starts. They're the future, right? It's great to do the rehabilitation and I work with guys a lot of times on the back end after they've already, been addicted or exposed to pornography for X amount of years, or their relationship is really strained right now, or maybe they just got divorced as a result of it. But I'm helping those guys out, but I'm trying to go more and more to the front end of things to help curb the demand. so that hopefully one day human trafficking ceases to exist, and that we can have a generation that stands up for biblical standards once again.
Awesome. Well, I
Yeah,
really appreciate the work that you do. Um, it, it's so encouraging, I think, to see a generation of people who are growing up. I think we, like you and I, grew up with an internet online reality that was unprecedented, and people didn't know what to do with it. But as we are growing up and taking a stand, I think it's really awesome to see so many more young people saying, okay, this stuff affected me, this stuff messed up my life, but I'm not sidelined. Like, this actually just fuels my passion to go out and help other people, and to just actually make a difference, so that the next generation, as you said, like, doesn't have to deal with this. I always tell people that, like, my goal is to not have to do any more youth groups, because I don't want to be being brought in to be like, hey, all these kids are having a problem with this. I want that. I want to go out of
yeah.
business, right? And so it's just super encouraging to hear what you guys are doing, and I love your testimony, and just the way that you have, like, basically you're taking the fight to them, instead of just you know, crawling up and hiding because you experienced the pain that you did. You're fighting back, and just proud of you, and I love the work that you're doing.
Amen, man. Thank you so much for the encouragement. Thank you for all that you guys do. You guys inspire me. I'm so glad that we were able to connect in DC. I love your brother. I love all the other guys over there in Canada. Man, you guys are my brothers. And so cool to see you guys, blaze the trail up there in Canada, with regards to this industry and this movement and advocating for what's right. So God bless your efforts and your work. And thank you again for bringing me on.